Hey everybody, Kyle Goeth here from goatfromreviews.com and the Goat From Reviews YouTube channel. I've got my first reaction, maybe perhaps a little biased, my first reaction of In Search of Darkness 3, the final journey into 80s horror. I just finished watching this 6-hour super doc covering 80s horror films in depth. And I was a backer for this, so I was a part of kind of, pushing for it to get made, because I loved the first two films so much. And I was a backer on 2, I was a backer on In Search of Tomorrow, and I will be continuing to help support these documentaries. I think they're a lot of fun. Basically, let me describe it to you like this, because I've had a lot of people where I've explained it to them, and it didn't really, it doesn't really catch if you're not a fan of this kind of genre work, and you're not a fan of this kind of movie. It might not work for you, because it's a love letter to a nostalgic part in all of our lives, our youth, our growing up, the things that inspired us at the time. And so that's what it really is. If you've ever watched VH1's I Love the 80s, and they did like I Love the 90s and the 70s, and they did a bunch of those shows on VH1, those were all just kind of, talking heads discussing the things that people loved, or the major events in the world during those times. And that's kind of what In Search of Darkness is. You get a bunch of people who really appreciate the good, the bad, and the ugly of horror cinema in the 80s, and they get to break it all down together, and that's essentially what it comes down to. If that interests you, the first two films are actually streaming on Shudder right now. In Search of Tomorrow, I don't think has a streaming home yet, but if you are interested, there are backers available for In Search of Tomorrow 2 soon. I'm assuming it just got announced, as well as an upcoming 90s installment of In Search of Darkness that you can probably get your hands on some of the older versions by backing that. So go ahead and check those out. The first two films, again, are on Shudder. I highly recommend these super docs for people who, even people who think they've seen every horror movie in the 80s, because you know what? I'm one of those guys who thought I'd seen every horror movie in the 80s, and now I have a letterbox list of over 200 that I have to get to. So I've got some movement to do. Yeah, go ahead and check it out. This was 6 hours, and it was some of the most fun. The third installment of this trilogy actually covers a lot of like VHS films, hidden gems, word of mouth horror, because we all know about the big ones, the Freddy, the Michael, the Jason, the Chucky, all these, the legendary horror films of the time period. And that's really what a lot of the first two films covered. This one, there was a lot of films that I knew about, some of the ones that were harder to find, some of the ones I've been trying to get my hands on, and this one covered a lot of those films, the ones where you hear from someone else, oh, you've really got to check out this director. He's not one of the well-known ones, but you've got to check him out. That was kind of the stuff that this third film covered, so it was a lot of new information for me. Although it was kind of fun still when you get to a moment where you're like, wait, they haven't covered Prom Night yet? But no, I had a lot of fun watching this super doc, and I'm more than excited to continue contributing to Creator VC and pushing for more of these, because they're comfort food for me, documentaries like this. A 6-hour documentary about 80s horror is never going to win an Oscar for Best Documentary. It's just not going to happen. But what it can do is it can be comfort food. It can be something you watch while you're, tired, while you're not feeling well, when you just need a pick-me-up, when you just want to celebrate something you love with the people around you. That's what this is. And you know what's great about it, too? My wife and I, she wasn't really watching it with me when I was watching it, but she sat down with me, and it was right during the section where they were talking about Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker, a film I hadn't seen yet. And about halfway through the description and the discussion about it, she was like, okay, pause the movie you're watching, because we gotta go find this. So we searched out Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker on Shudder, and we watched the film. That's one of the things that this kind of a documentary can do for you, is the movies that you've seen, great. I can celebrate the things I love for a little bit. But the movies you haven't seen are just as much fun to hear about, because there's a lot of stuff that you're just like, oh, I got to check that one out. Oh, yeah, there goes the watch list. That's kind of what it comes down to. So if you're a fan of 80s horror in general, the 1980s as a decade, search out the first two films here. And then when the third one, I assume, will eventually get to Shudder, the first two are, when it makes its way there, check out that third one as well. 15 hours in total across this trilogy, and I will happily continue supporting all of their work in the future. Thank you guys for joining me. Check out my other film reviews at goatfromreviews.com. You can check out Goat From Reviews on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Almighty Goatman. And you can check out my show, Kyle and Nick on Film, that I co-host with Nick Plotachuk from the St. Paul Filmcast. We've got new episodes of that Mondays, Thursdays, and we do Scary Movie Saturdays. You'll probably see some movies from this on Scary Movie Saturday episodes. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.